Hello, everyone, and welcome to Small Town Big Life podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Diana Welshans. She's a piano instructor, music instructor, works heavily in theater and film. There's a lot. And we recently crossed paths and started talking film and theater and script writing and couldn't stop talking. So today we are talking about film, entertainment, script, all things related. And we are going to jump in and get started right now. Hello, Diana.
Hello.
Why don't you cover the big holes I left in the introduction and maybe elaborate a little more?
Really, right now I've been on a really heavy voice coaching gig. I started out as a strong piano teacher, but I teach a lot of voice, and many times it's voice coaching, preparing people for auditions, preparing them for theater, whatever it is they're going to do. So I have more voice students right now than I do piano.
Yeah, and we, like I said in the introduction, we just recently met and started talking, and because of a project that you're doing, and kind of crossed paths, and your plate is full. You are a very, very busy person, and I mean, I can relate to that. I've done it, and I love it, and I know you love it. I can tell. It pours out of you how much you love what you do, and that's why talking to you is so much fun.
I am really blessed.
Yeah. It's an exciting thing to do for those who never get the opportunity to even do just some kind of get involved in a community play or make a short film, or they kind of missing out, don't you think?
Yeah, and you know what I tell people? I tell people, do it.
Yeah, just
do it. Just jump in and allow yourself to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to be less than perfect, but let that expression come out.
Yeah.
There's so many that come to me saying, can you show me how to do this? Can you show me how to do that? Can you teach me how to write a song? How did you break into theater? And all these things. And you can just see the hunger pouring out of them.
Yeah.
And I feel so bad for them because, it's like Jesus said, there are so many sheep and there's no shepherds.
Yeah.
Well, so many times I feel like these students or people who come to me, they're looking for someone to shepherd them. Well, one of the most wonderful pieces of advice I ever got was from a worship leader. And he told me, he said, Diana, he said, no one can make this happen for you.
Yeah.
He said, you got to step onto the water by yourself. And he said, and let God guide you through this thing. And he says, you're going to walk across the water. And it was because I was looking for someone to mentor me, someone to do, all these things. And he basically looked at me and said, jump in, girl, learn to swim.
Yep.
And learn to take the knocks. And he said, trust God to guide you. It was the best piece of advice he ever gave me. And I love it.
It reminds me, one of my favorite sayings is jump and build your wings on the way down. And,
my gosh.
Yeah. And
that's great.
That reminded me of it. So, but like I said in the beginning, the primary reason you and I met was due to a film project that you're working on. So film was kind of our first talking point.
Yeah.
And how, of all the things that you've done, what got you... I guess I don't know if you started in film, but if you didn't, what made you say, "Man, I got to do that"?
It's really interesting. Well, first off, my first memories, I think, of my mother and I was me sitting on her lap playing the piano and teaching me to sing, and I was very young. And then we would sit and watch movies, and I'd sit on her lap, and I was just like this 3-year-old kid going, just struck by the images. Well, I did theater. And I left theater. I was in Philly and New York, and things were really opening up for me. And it was during that time I had a real experience with Jesus Christ. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
And I was hooked. That's all I can say. I knew that I knew he was real. I knew, and I was raised a good Baptist girl who. Oops, sorry, I'm bouncing the table.
That's okay.
Who really walked away. And I had walked away for 17 years. And
were you pretty young when that happened? When you say you walked away, I mean?
I was about 19.
Yeah, that's
18,
typically an age when that I did the same thing.
Yeah, you get disillusioned.
Oh yeah. Plus, you get invincible. You're like, wait, I got this.
You think
You think you got it, and I know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the disillusionment, I'm convinced, is caused through my pride.
Oh yeah.
You know, I had a lot of pride. So anyway, I basically came to the end of myself. Even though this career was opening up for me, I'm walking down Highway 13 out of Philadelphia, and out of the blue, I just said, Jesus, if you're there, would you let me know? And I felt his presence. My knees practically came together.
Oh, wow.
And all I can say is no one was going to take that away from me.
Yeah.
And my wonderful father, who kept sending me daily breads, and I kept throwing them in the trash can. I go to the room where I was living, and I just pulled out this daily bread, and I happened to have this Bible. And for some reason, because I didn't even believe God existed, I was just really angry.
Right.
Pulled out my Bible and started reading. It was just like the words were jumping off the page at me. So anyway, my husband was in Jersey Shore at the time, and he's wonderful. He said, when I was going down to Philly, he said, if you can promise me so much money a year, I'll come down. But he says, until then, lady, I'm not taking any of this serious. I was a real handful.
Yeah. Many of us were, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm not even going to get into that. But I was a handful, and poor Mike, he just like, ah.
Yeah.
Well, he came down to see me, and he said, you know what? He said, you're serious about this. And he says, I'll move down, I'm ready. And I says, no, I want to go back. And he goes, what? Because he saw me be like this for 3-4 years. I was all about theater.
Yeah.
And I said, I gave my life to the Lord, and I want to go home. And he went, what?
Yeah.
It was really an interesting story.
Yeah.
So anyway, I came back, and forgive me for taking so long, but I think it's good subtext.
Absolutely.
I walked away from theater, totally, went cold turkey. And I had other theaters phoning me saying, hey, would you come work for us? I'm going, no, I'm going to stay in Jersey Shore. Well, it was difficult, and I had 2 little babies. I got pregnant. I wanted to raise kids. Began going to church, surrendering my life to the Lord, just growing in the faith. And eventually, I was drawn to the Pentecostal faith, really seeking the Lord, really seeking. And I remember during that time, those 4 years, it was very difficult for me because I have former students where all kinds of doors were opening up for them.
Yeah.
I have friends who were touring South Africa with theater, and I'm like going, It was very hard for me. And I did a lot of crying. And I remember, but through it all, I kept telling the Lord, I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. And I remember one night I put the kids to bed, and my husband was out on the road driving truck, and I just prayed. I prayed for a solid hour, and I said, I want to hear from you. And I remember I was on my knees just praying, and I sat very quietly, and it was like something came up from within after all of that. And he said, this one's hard. I well up a little bit. He said, I'm going to restore your former dreams. And I told him, I said, I don't want them. And he says, you're getting them.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really something.
Yeah.
So then when...
That's huge.
Yeah, it was huge. So when Margot, my daughter was 6 and my son was 4, I started this little theater group.
Yeah.
We actually performed in here. And it kind of gained strength. It was out of a Christian school. And then eventually I felt to take it out of the Christian school. And it was all centered in the church. And we did, but we didn't do it in the church. It was kind of independent, but I had it submitted to my church. But all kids from all faiths, even kids who didn't have any faith, came in. And there was quite a following. Well, then what got me into the film is that one time in prayer, I was at a prayer meeting at my church. I just started praying. And I just felt, once again, coming up from inside of me saying, buy the camera, start doing film. And I went, I don't know anything about film. Yeah, I really felt very strongly to do that. And what was interesting, after that, I went home, and the next day, someone from the church who I really respect greatly calls me up and says, Diana, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I really feel God is telling me to tell you it's time to get into film.
Yeah.
And then I had a third person, without me saying anything, call me up and tell me. So I knew.
It just comes out of nowhere. Yeah, my experiences were similar. I tell people I didn't really seek a lot of the paths later in life with being a pastor, and God just kind of took me behind the woodshed and set the course for me. And I have no regrets. I mean, my life is way better going by His plans than mine.
Oh my gosh!
So, how do you see film now? You know, you and I talked about this a good bit, influencing culture. I mean, that's a huge question.
It is a huge question.
And I know that there's it could have a 30-minute answer, but I guess, you know, that I'm looking for the elevator answer, which is kind of challenging. but
you know, I have thought about this so hard, and I've wrestled with this in prayer.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you're taught in performance schools and things like this, art reflects what's going on in a society.
Yep. I went to art school. Jackie went to art school. Yeah. And that's exactly right.
And so we get away with so much because this is what's going on in society. But so much of who I was growing up as a child was shaped by Frank Capra.
Oh, yeah.
William Wyler, these really great filmmakers. Mm-hmm. And you know, when you put it that way, it's kind of like they are the paint on the palette of your dreams. I mean, because they shape your vision for how you dream, what you dream about, and in terms of your lens. And it was very interesting because in 1960, it's almost like God took the Band-Aid off of Hollywood, and all this stuff began pouring out, and a lot of revelations about what went on in studios, and even more so even now.
Oh, sure.
Which is very painful.
Yeah, yeah.
And you sit back and you go, ah. But at the same time, strong role models are very important.
Yes.
They're really, really important. Examples of making right choices are really important. If let's just say a generation growing up, all they have is what I call the anti-hero making wrong choices throughout and getting away with it.
Yeah.
There I go.
That's okay.
What do you do with that, you know? And so for me, I think it is influencing a culture. I think we need to be really aware. I think Hollywood's gotten extremely honest in some things, but at the same time, money has influenced it so strongly that it's gone way over to the other side.
It has gone way over to the other side. When it's I think film, the influence of film also is. I tried to explain to people, younger people who don't know about film, younger people who go to film school or art school know this, but just how much work goes into it, and especially when I watch black and white movies, because one of my daughters, the youngest one. You know, I'm not into black and white. So when me and the older daughter, who's went to film school, talk about it, I try to explain to the younger one, do you know how hard it is to paint with light and make it look right, especially in black and white, and how much work? And I don't know, and it speaks to. Back then, they had to work so hard just to make something look right.
Oh, they did.
And now you've got digital processing and all these different things. You can filters on your computer. You can, if you got something bad, you can dress it up. But back then, you better get it right on set. Oh, because there's some dressing up, but not as much as there is now.
That's why they took 149 takes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the agony that the composers and conductors went through scoring a film, I was like, oh my gosh, they had to punch little holes.
Oh, tons.
It was just crazy.
It was so labor intensive. And now when people talk about the hard work that goes into a film, it's not so much physical hard work as it is sitting at a Mac all day.
Yeah.
And I mean, and post.
Yeah.
And
oh, yeah.
And some, I don't know if I'm old fashioned or not. We were talking, we had a podcast a few weeks ago where we were talking about Star Wars, and one of the ladies on the panel, the youngest one, Jackie and I were kind of asking her. Jackie Brown's flying the plane, by the way. She's not on camera, but she's here. Hi, Jackie.
Hi.
And we were asking her, hey, when you watch the older films, the first 3 that come out, do you look at the effects and go, ugh? That's not good. And, her answer was, no. It's classic. It's Star Wars. That gets a pass and it's totally fine. And nowadays, I think a lot of film in the end, they've relied too much on effects. And so they're using the effects for the storytelling, and it's taking from script and character development.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And yeah. This is a very mean soapbox for me.
No, that's good. I mean,
I completely agree. They need to really soft pedal.
And George Lucas even said
the CGI.
A special effect is a boring thing without a good story.
Yeah,
and
we need so much more.
I agree.
Focus on the story, so much more.
I kind of went down a rabbit hole, but when I was talking about it influencing culture, it's like I think your opening statement was beautiful. You nailed it right out of the gate, because our art reflects our culture, and our culture influences our art, and it's a circular.
It's a cycle, and someone has got to go forward.
Yeah,
but they got to know how to lead them forward.
Yeah,
without shutting down the viewer. You got to keep going for the heart, and you got to reach in, and you got to be able to pull them out.
Yeah,
you got to pull them forward. Everybody says, you don't want to preach in films, and I agree. Preaching in films is a mistake. But in many respects, a good example is I was doing a play, and I wanted some of the leaders at the church I was at the time to come see it. And they were carrying on about Gladiator. Gladiator was so awesome. Well, Gladiator is an amazing movie.
Sure.
But I thought, here's youth from their church, they're working very hard, and they just didn't have time. And this one leader, who I love, he is a really great guy. I called him up and I said, would you want to come see this? And he goes, well, how long is your play? And I said, it's as long as a Penn State football game. And he got very quiet. He said, I'll be there.
Yeah.
He knew I had him. Well, we tend to... We separate church, and we separate art, and we separate sports, and the mistake we're making, it's all flowing together.
Yeah.
So we're preaching in church.
Yeah.
And so, forgive me, I'm going down another hole.
Go right ahead.
The church is trying to do films, and they're preaching in films, and it's not working.
Yeah.
It is not working. But the church will go see secular films.
I know.
And say, man, this is powerful. And yet they'll go to a church and they'll listen to preach, and they'll go, man, this is powerful.
Right.
And it's like, wait a minute, we're missing it.
Well, yeah, and the state of Christian films right now is a sad state of affairs, because they try to, they abandon real life in their films, because not every film is an altar call or ends in an altar call. And the folks I worked with before in film, that was there's some great Christian films. I'm not broad stroking the whole industry, but the majority of ones that come across my screen are predictable, and as soon as it opens with the music, you see the protagonist, and you're like, oh, this guy's going to have a challenge, and then they cross paths with, oh, here's this bad guy, and the shot in low key, and he comes in the room and the music plays, and Joe's not saved, and he's evil, and he's drinking and carousing, and I mean, they're not childish illustrations, but the point comes across like an after school special. Some of you probably don't remember those, but and then it's obvious that and then then Joe has another friend who's not saved, and one of them gets saved. And the end is we just pray for Joe and hope he gets saved. And his friends are Christian, and they walk off into the sunset, and there's an altar call. And I mean, I know that's a very generalized description, but it fits the package for the way most of these films are in the storytelling. And I'm like, that's not real life.
No.
You and I just, I know you haven't seen it yet. Talked about Mr. Church.
Yeah, and I want to see it. I'm just fascinated by it.
That is a frog's breath away from being a Christian movie. There's like one part where there's some little cussing, and it's not gratuitous. It actually contextually it works. It didn't need to be there, but it's not. I don't know. It's you can get past that. It's Eddie Murphy, and when people hear that, they assume the worst. But it's not Eddie Murphy being Eddie Murphy, and. But the message of the film about the human condition, about love, about all these things, the only thing it's missing is a reference to Jesus, and it would be a Christian film. But it's real life. It's not.
Absolutely.
And Christian filmmakers are capable. Like I said, there's a few movies out there that are good.
There has to be a way that I told myself I'm not a Christian filmmaker. I'm a filmmaker
who's a Christian.
Right. And writes films about Christians. Yeah. And the difference between us and other people is Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's it. And what we have through walking with him, through fellowshipping with him, through the empowering of his Holy Spirit. Do we just kind of snap our fingers and walk on water?
Right.
No, that doesn't happen with us.
Right.
We have real challenges, but we also have real hope.
Yeah.
And that key word is real hope.
Yeah.
We have, and there's real faith there.
And I think, like when you said we don't snap our fingers and walk on water. I think the reality that we're just as human as everyone else, and we know that needs to be displayed more in films, because as a pastor, I have discussions with people that they don't have with other people. I counsel. They tell me things like I'm losing my faith, or I can't quit, or they confess to me things that they don't tell anyone else, and I know more about them than other people know about them, and as a result, I think to myself, these human struggles within the believer and the body of believers is not as present in storytelling in film as it should be, because it what it does is when you're more honest about real life, you're also glorifying Christ more, because you're showing exactly what it is He's pulling you out of. And a lot of, I think some filmmakers are afraid to do that. So I hate to sound too harsh, but some of the plots insult your intelligence.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And even in the area of comedy, we've talked about all of that. And I know I've really changed a great deal, and I've gone to the Lord and saying, God, is this you, or am I just, wallowing in my flesh? And for instance, because doors opened up for me back in the secular field, and the Lord said, if you don't go in, who will?
Right, yeah.
If you don't go in as a light, who will?
Yep.
And every day I have so many people pour into my studio, and all they need from me is for me to look at them and smile and say, and I don't mean this fake, I'm very serious, I love your voice. I love what's coming from the inside of you. That, to me, represents Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Because Jesus loved, these people walk in, I think, God, you created them.
Right.
Well, we as Christians, in the art that we're doing, for instance, in film, that needs to be seen. And it needs to be seen. God loves us in our mess.
Yeah.
And as adults, we don't see enough examples, role models of people coming out of their messes.
Right. Or the messes are trivialized, or diminished in the films.
Yeah,
Or they're predictable. Like you see
Very
somebody
predictable,
somebody in a hospital bed at the beginning, and by the end you're pretty sure they're going to live, and it's pretty sure it's going to be because of a prayer was answered, and you're pretty sure that the answered prayer is going to result in somebody saving. And I'm not saying those things don't happen, but
I've had so many. I mean, I've had to console so many who had loved ones who died.
Exactly. Life takes a hard left when we and I would like to see more films deal with topics like that. When people come to my office and say, I'm losing my faith, I prayed and prayed and prayed, and yet, my mother died or something like that. And then I sit down and this isn't a counseling session on the podcast. It would take a long time to go down that road and address all the things I say.
Yeah.
But and there is a lot, but topics like that, the questions that people don't want to tackle, would be, I think, more helpful to explore in some of the Christian filmmaking.
Absolutely, and also comedy. I love comedy.
It's huge.
I'm convinced the role of comedy, it destroys pride.
Yeah.
And it gets us all laughing at each other. In fact, I think that was Sophocles, or I forget, one of those said that was the goal of it. And I had prayed about it. I said, why comedy? And I just kept hearing it destroys pride. And if you look in the Bible, God is probably the best comedic writer there is.
Yeah, just look at the platypus. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
The story of Esther. The story of Esther is, there's Haman.
Yeah.
Sets up the gallows. And he runs, he trips, and he falls face down in her lap.
Yeah.
And the king goes bonkers, and he ends up hanging. I mean, that's very ironic comedy.
Yeah. And there's other things in there that people don't read it right. When you, like Jesus, when they ask Jesus how great are the chances of a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus, and when you see it in movies, they make it look like Jesus going, I tell you this, surely I tell you that.
Yeah,
and you're like, that's not how he talks. If you study Hebrew and Hebrew humor, and it's dry, and I would imagine it went something like this. About the same as getting a camel through the eye of a needle. And they probably laughed and said, that's funny. And because they got the story, and you're right, there was humor.
My gosh.
There was things, and there's things that, in the Bible, I think people read it with too serious of a tone sometimes, and they miss over the humanity. God used humans; these are human beings, and sometimes people read the Bible very robotic, and you're like, nah, these are people. And Jesus was the God man, and he spoke. The whole reason he came to us as a man is so we could observe him as a man and interact with him as one of us. And he didn't suddenly become a man to turn into some boring robot.
No.
And in fact, it was just the opposite.
No,
it was to make a stronger connection with us so that we would see and feel him.
I remember I was doing what was it? It was, I forget which one, but anyway, I had an actor coming to me saying, I'm really having a hard time seeing Jesus as somebody who, I think it was at the end of a love letter, clearing the table, and he said, Jesus would never do that. I said, oh, really? I said, well, he went into the temple, and he saw all the money changers and those guys selling doves, and I said, he took the time to take 3 cords and turn them into a whip.
It's right. He sat there.
And then he knocked all
about
those tables over, and he whipped them out and left them. And this young man said, you're right. And I brought out all these things in Isaiah. And I said, please bear in mind, he wrote Isaiah.
Right.
He is the living word. I said, he wrote all these things. And God and Jesus, they are uber passionate. God invented the emotions. It's just a wonderful palette.
Yeah.
The problem people
It's the box of crayons in your soul.
Yeah. It's beautiful. But the problem we have as humans is that we bow to the altar of our emotions, and we call it God.
Yeah.
And God says,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, and he said, well, I got this from Pastor Holcomb. He was excellent. But basically, though, what he's saying is you're not what you feel. You're what the Word of God says you are. But these emotions, God invented them. We flow through them. But many times we have to say, okay, I would really like to give this person what I feel, and I want to take vengeance and blah, 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 blah. And the Lord said, no. This is my job. Right. Your job is to deny yourself. I know you're going through it, but you got to deny yourself. Let me handle this.
Yeah.
And that takes faith. That's the walk of faith. And, in the Bible it says without faith, it's impossible to please him.
Yeah. Faith is something that you have to activate. I mean, it is. Wait, let me think of a different way to word that. When your faith is strong, it activates things in you that allow you to see God's presence that you don't normally see when your faith is not strong.
That's
because
right.
You know how you tell people
good.
when somebody gets saved. I say there's things that happen. You notice things you didn't notice before. You see things you didn't see before. You hear things you didn't hear before. Things take on new meaning. You start seeing God's fingerprints more, because just like the Bible says, faith is evidence of things unseen. When the faith is strong, the unseen becomes seen, because you start having a better understanding.
I keep reminding myself that we're spiritual beings that have a soul and live in a body.
Right. Well, yeah, you're not I think C.S. Lewis said something like, you are not a body with a soul in it. You're a soul that has custody of a body. Yeah. And for now, and I'm thinking, I always add the word temporary. You're a soul that has temporary custody of a body, which is true. And I'm beating on that drum all the time with folks about, look at life through the eternal perspective, not the temporary perspective. Because if you look at it like it's only the dash from womb to tomb, then that's
Yeah. That's good. Well, and that makes me think of other movies. But anyway.
Well, you can talk about anything.
Boy, we're getting off.
No, we can go down as many rabbit holes. See, what are your thoughts on the quality and power of current Christian films or secular films? Now, we kind of talked about that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So, what's your mission? How would you like to add to, change, or improve the current status quo in the medium of cinematic storytelling? That's just a long way of going, so what's your thing?
Whatever works.
Yeah.
Whatever works. I'll do, like some of the story concepts you gave me. I love. I really
thank
love.
you.
I'll do whatever I think works, whatever gels. I love irony. I like comedy.
Rod Serling is my hero.
Yeah.
And I love irony. So
I made one dramatic film, and it was a lovely film. I mean, it was very grainy, very amateurish. Okay. But people said, some people came and said, I really felt the anointing. Other people really tore apart the technical part of it. It was my first film.
Yeah.
But I have learned, and I learned this through listening to Frank Capra, some of his interviews. He said, if you're not entertaining people, they're not going to get it.
Yeah.
And especially if they're sitting in a theater. It better be entertaining people, whether it's through science fiction, if it's through comedy. Many times I can deliver a heavy message through something lighthearted.
Yeah, comedy and music are the two universal languages. And I was telling you some of the plays I did, and comedy is my favorite to do live because you get an immediate reaction.
Yeah.
When you do drama, you really don't know until it's over when people come up and talk to you. But when you do comedy, you get instant gratification because if you hear them laugh, you're like, oh man, I'm doing good. And then it feeds you and then you do better. I agree with you. I'm sure you know this. Jackie and I talk about this kind of stuff all the time. But I remember in script writing class, my teacher, my mentor, Frank Barnhart, an amazing professor and actor and director, he told me, he said, when you're writing a script, I don't care if it's film or theater, he said, within every 15 or 20 minutes, you have to write in a laugh. And he said it can be a little laugh. He said
it's the golden rule.
He said people have this energy that have to come out, and if they're not allowed to let it out, they'll find something to laugh at themselves. And it may be your acting, it may be your clothes, it may be somebody sitting in another row, but it's an energy that people naturally have that has to come out, and it doesn't have to be a rip-roaring knee slapper, but you have to write a little giggle in there.
You got to write a little giggle in there. And oh my goodness, that's so true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
and that was beautiful. Every 15 minutes, I love that.
Every 15 or 20 minutes, yeah, something like that. And he said it's got to be because people watching us. It was interesting. He was conveying this during drama, during a dramatic script. It was the Titanic. He said there has to be something. This is a rule, and it can be a little thing. but it's got to be there. And I thought, man, I had never thought about that before. He said when people are watching something real heavy, they're human beings. They need a break. They need a second.
They really do.
And when you give them a giggle, they're like,
and if you're doing something that's very heavy and very strong, and I have found that out the hard way. You know, I'm doing these little webisodes, and these just little 5-minute webisodes, putting them up, and we put one out just about cheating, and the girl's confesses to her boyfriend she's been cheating, and he gets upset with her, and she promises she'll never do it again, and she cheats and throws the whole curve off. Everybody's mad. Well, the teacher finds out about it and throws that test out and calls a pop quiz, and this girl flunks it, and but you see the way the girl played it, you see she's desperate. She needs to get a scholarship. She needs to have perfect grades.
Yeah.
And blah, 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 blah. But anyway, she's running down. But we put the title up at the end, Walk in Integrity. We just didn't want to throw. I said, if we throw anything else about cheating in there, it's going to shut everybody off. Just walk in integrity. Well, one of the things I'm aware of is that even a 5-minute webisode, I better start putting some humor in it.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to lose them.
Yep. It's an energy that has to be allowed. He said things like that were pretty interesting. He said you need to allow people to be human, and when they can giggle for a quick second, they're grounded and they refocus right back into where you don't lose them. It's like you said.
Oh, it's so important, so important. I just think God invented comedy, and He's the best script writer there is.
Amen. You can take any book of the Bible and make an epic film series out of it. I mean, if you do it right, like the same time and energy that they put into some of these other wonderful programs, the Bible could be. I mean, oh my goodness.
You know, in all honesty, I wrote a play called Carolina, and it was the story of Ruth. Set in Kentucky, 1930.
Like different context, different characters, but that story.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. People were we put it on at Millbrook. It was filling up like crazy. Everybody loved this, and people loved it. They were laughing over it. They were crying. It was the story of Ruth. And it was like, what would it look like if somebody married a Moabite? Or, well, she wasn't. What she was, she came from the wrong side of the tracks.
Right.
And, brought her back to the hometown with the mother-in-law.
So
it was a lot of fun.
Was it obvious, or was it like something like "Where, oh brother, where art thou?" was like Homer's Odyssey type of a
little bit like that.
So you didn't. It wasn't so obvious. But then later, if you tell someone, they'll go, "Oh,
oh yeah, yeah." And my daughter had a beautiful idea. She really felt the stories of David. Did I share this with you? Maybe I did.
I don't know.
I don't think I did. I shared it with someone else. The whole Odyssey of David would make a great Western.
Oh yeah. Oh, you talking about David? What happened with Bathsheba and all that kind of stuff?
The whole 9 yards.
The whole 9 yards. Yeah.
And she said, "Mom, we could take just one segment and it would make it a fantastic play." And
you could. And it's being sneaky good too, because you tell people watch it and they like it. You go, "You just saw a Bible story."
Well, and that's why we're doing it. Because yes. And it isn't to take away from what those people went through back then.
No.
And not to make light of the Bible. But it is the intent. It's very, very important. Very important.
Yeah. No, it just, I think it just presents it on a different screen. It's the same movie. I mean, it's the same. Well, I mean, in terms of the story.
Well, one of the things I would love to do, and I presented this with the cinematographers I work with, that what would it look like today? You know, the story of where Jesus is, there's people gather around, and he's healing, and they bring this man on a stretcher. They can't get him in. They take the tiles out of the roof.
Yeah.
I said, what if there is a man who leaves hospice, and he's going home to die?
Right.
And he's in this ambulance, and he says, you know what? There's one last place I want to go. I really got to go. I really want to go here. So the ambulance driver says, okay, we're going to cut this guy a break. And they pull up and they want to get into this church and they can't get in. It's crowded. It's packed out. It could even be a house where there's a meeting. And they can't get in. So they carry this guy up the fire escape. They go out the back. They get the jaws of life out. They cut a big hole in through the roof. And they let this guy down through. And here's the people going, and the stuff's coming through, and they're looking at this. They're just around praying.
Yeah. So
then he's there, and there's a pastor there, but it's all the people praying, and they go to him, and he says, "Your faith has saved you."
Yeah.
And they said, and basically all they do, they just pray for him. And I said it would be cool. You could even do a kind of like a watermark Jesus laying hands on him.
Yeah, I wonder if people would know well, Christians would know the story.
Yeah, but if you did a watermark Jesus, that would really show. And he's healed. And I said, that's big stuff. Now I know that's happening over in third world countries right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of theories. People think that Jesus, well, the power of God is on display stronger in third world countries because they need it.
They need it,
and because
they don't have the technology.
They're not They're not preoccupied and distracted to not be looking for.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. And I said, what would that look like today? You know?
Yeah.
What would it look like? The woman with the alabaster box wanting to worship Jesus.
There's
you
no,
could just go, wow.
You could go on and on. I mean, we're used to the epics like Christ and Noah's Ark and Moses and all that stuff, but there are a ton of little occurrences in the Bible. There's I kind of made my own Snickers commercial in a Bible class in college. This kind of joke, but we were talking about the fig tree when Jesus cursed the fig tree.
Oh yeah,
he was hungry and then he walked over and he cursed the fig tree. And my professor said, "What do you think the disciples said when they saw Jesus do this?" And I said, "They probably said, 'You're not yourself when you're hungry.'" Like the Snickers commercials.
True. Yeah.
So
that's wonderful.
But anyway, to get back to reality, yeah. A second ago, I just want to rewind a tiny bit. I was telling you my hero was Rod Serling. You brought up Capra, and is there anyone else like any? And I'm talking about because you're multi-layered in terms of you're not just limited to film.
Yeah.
Are there people that are just like, man, that's my person. And I know if you could give an answer like me and say there's just so many, but
I think Spielberg's a marvelous filmmaker.
Me too, because he's the master.
He's a good filmmaker. He's a great filmmaker. What are you saying? I think he works real hard to bring people ahead. Bring forward.
I couldn't agree with you more. In school, and I know that I was probably in a classroom more recently than you were because you were probably teaching while I was learning in a lot of cases because I went way later. But the books now, they even have what's called the Spielberg look.
I know.
And they get, when when the actors are looking at the sky, you're supposed to be looking at something or at the shark, or it's officially use the Spielberg look. And when I talk to people, I say Spielberg is set apart for many, many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is because he's very masterful when it comes to comedy and terror are more powerful when they're insinuated than when they're spoon-fed.
Absolutely.
When you spoon-feed people images, it doesn't do much. But Spielberg knows how to insinuate comedy, insinuate terror, and because the human imagination is way more frightening than an image you can spoon-feed and shove in someone's face. Yeah. And when I'm trying to think of a good example. Well, many examples. When the shark rose up and they showed Chief Brody's face in Jaws. When the aliens are walking around the kitchen and they show Barry, the little boy's face, watching them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of stuff I'm talking about. And it's not just frightening or jaw-dropping moments. It's also in the storytelling. It's in the visuals.
Close Encounters is loaded with that sort of thing.
Oh, big time. And that's why Spielberg is so, or one of his strongest points is like you go the opposite route, like Quentin Tarantino, who puts everything disturbing and upsetting on the screen. And the sad truth is, Quentin Tarantino is an exceptionally gifted writer. He just doesn't. Shock value to me is old, and it's played out, and it doesn't. Spielberg is the opposite of that. He hands you the keys to your brain, basically. Whereas instead of spoon feeding you Polaroid pictures, and I think like Quentin Tarantino, I think it would be insanely. I know he's successful, but I think his films would go down as greater classics if he could adopt this way of taking the Spielberg approach and trying to empower your brain a little more when you watch the movies?
There's something about Spielberg, and I think some of it even has to do from. This sounds so benign, but he didn't have it easy as a kid.
Spielberg?
Yeah,
right.
He did not, and I think he saw that struggle, and somewhere his heart got really softened.
Yeah,
there's just something there.
Yeah,
and he was determined to reach in and pull it out. I've seen other filmmakers. Don't ask me their names in recent times that do the same thing. But yeah, you talking about Tarantino? I agree.
Yeah,
I mean he's a smart filmmaker.
Yeah, he's just.
But unfortunately, he's smart filmmaker. That's it.
But shock value and godlessness, to me, don't thicken the fabric of the story,
no.
or the interest of it.
No.
But I can't let this pass. What you were just talking about Spielberg, because I read, being a huge fan forever on not just the movies but him, and I remember I bought a book one time that was about him and filmmaking, and it went behind the scenes on several of them. And one thing that always touched me, I thought this was so cool, is when they were filming Jurassic Park. I forget what Hawaiian island it was on. There was a hurricane, and the person who was writing the story was someone on the staff. It might have been the AD, and he said Steven spent his time with the child actors, the boy and the girl, in the middle of everyone in the hotel had to evacuate to the center room, and like the ballroom, the safest place. And he said he went and he sat in the corner with them the whole time and told them stories and engaged and tried to get them to laugh and relax, and told them everything was going to be okay. And then kept asking them for stories and telling them stories. So of all these people and all these emergencies and all this stuff, and you're the man in charge, he goes and finds the two little kids that are terrified and sits down and stays with them. And I always thought that was so cool.
Well, another story, and I think I heard Spielberg say this when he was filming Schindler's List. It was one of his children's birthdays, and they were all over there shooting, and he was extremely late for the birthday celebration, and his wife was not too happy.
Yeah.
And he came in, and she was kind of, scolding him, saying, "What in the world?" And he sat there, and he just broke down and sobbed. And he said, "We filmed the destruction of the children today."
Yeah.
And he said, "It just did me in. It's just really hard."
That is an upsetting. I think it should be required watching for history students, but it's
so hard.
I saw an interview with him about that after he made it, and he said never in my life. He talked about how much he appreciated his success, but he said he never once in his life went into a situation and like an 800-pound gorilla and said, "Listen, I'm Steven Spielberg and we're going to make this happen." He said, until Schindler's List. He said, "That's the first time I threw my weight around and said, we're going to do it this way. We're going to get the people that survive. We're going to get the consultants. And he said that's the only time he threw his weight around to make sure that authenticity was the chief priority."
That's one of the reasons I'm very impressed with him. He also came out about 8 years ago and said Hollywood is going to implode from within if we don't change. And we're seeing it happen.
Oh, we're big time. We're big time seeing that happen.
So many filmmakers were angry at him. Studios were angry. He said, but it's the truth. He said the storytelling is very bad. The script writing is awful. Right now, the best script writers are on TV. Yeah,
they are, and they're doing series. They're doing series on Netflix, Amazon.
Yeah.
Speaking of Amazon and Steven Spielberg, here's a little nugget for you or anyone listening. If you want to have a good time with Spielberg, there is a show on Netflix. It's on Amazon Prime called "Who Are You People?" And the whole thing is just a documentary about the small town where they filmed Close Encounters, which is really it's really in Alabama.
Awesome.
It's in Alabama. So they go and they find all these small town people, and they come out with their Polaroids and their pictures, and they recall of when Spielberg came into town, rented an airplane hangar, and went and found actors. And the small town people like here, they're like, Hollywood's coming here to make a movie, and about meeting Richard Dreyfuss, and they talk on funny things like, because a ton of them, well, all of them were extras in the movie, and they talk to them about their memories of it. And of course, we know there's a line in the movie where Richard Dreyfuss says, "Who are you people?" Yeah. That's that's what the whole thing is from the perspective. It's funny because a couple of them, older folks, they go, "I never watched it. That's not my kind of movie."
I love that movie. Oh, my God.
And then there's other people that were in it. So Grace and I watched it, and it was, I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. I would say, this is going to sound weird, charming, very charming. And as soon as we watched it, we're like, boom, Close Encounters is getting watched right now.
And I gotta pull that out.
Yeah, it's only about like an hour, and it's really well done. And you just fall in love with these people. They're just small town people that they were having, unemployment rate was bad there, so folks are getting hired and they're to play in all these. And they talk about Spielberg interacting with them and giving them hints and giving them, it's heartwarming, and it's just a little documentary.
I just show you what I love about that movie is Richard Dreyfuss throwing things through the window. You know, to build this big. I mean, he's got a vision. He's got he's seeing this mountain. He's got to build this mountain.
He's obsessed.
Oh.
He's upset. If you remember the neighbors,
wonderful.
The neighbors and the old lady.
Yes.
They said, "Can you play a nosy old lady?" And she's like, "Of course I can. I do that all the time." And then they said, "You got to look out the window at Richard," and she goes, "We don't have a window." And they're like, "We're going to build you a window in your house, and we're going to remodel part of your house so you have a window that faces that driveway." And so all that stuff was in a real neighborhood,
wonderful?
And those were the real people that lived there.
I love that. That's the other thing. I knew he works with a lot of non-actors.
Oh yeah,
it's so good.
It is, and some of them, they're just the sweetest people you can imagine. So yeah, it's called "Who Are You People?"
See, I would love to see that sort of thing really get regenerated. I mean, because right now, we're getting back to movies today. A lot of stuff is being filmed in front of a blue screen. And it's
tons.
Very frustrating.
I know.
And come on.
People are more in love with and I don't want to be, okay, cinematography is important. I know that. But when you're more, if you spend more time and money on making the screen look like a postcard than what you do, what's occurring in the character,
you've missed it.
Your balance is getting weird.
The balance is getting very weird. And I know back in 76 or 78 when Star Wars first came out, and it was great, but there was warnings. I remember Jimmy Stewart, a man who was like in his late 60s at the time, saying, "This is fun," but he said if it continues, it's going to really bring harm to Hollywood.
What, the special effects?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like I said, Lucas said special effects pretty boring. But when it comes to Star Wars, I used to tell my daughter before she got into film school, I said, in this past century, the two stories that are going to survive into film school in the next century are going to be The Godfather and Star Wars. I go, they're both going to be, because they are now, and anything Spielberg did. I remember film class, mise en scène, what's on screen. What did we study for that class? For everything that's in the screen, we studied Spielberg. Jaws, we had to watch Jaws. Jaws, Citizen Kane, and
I love Citizen Kane.
And, we had to, Train Spotting, some of the disturbing scenes from Train Spotting and Requiem for a Dream, which don't watch.
No.
It'll ruin your brain.
I will not watch it.
But in film class, it's a masterpiece if you're giving examples for editing.
Yeah.
If you're learning how to edit, it is a masterpiece. But if you're going to watch a movie and you want to jump out a window and run into the ocean screaming, that's the one that'll do it. Yeah. So you agree, Jackie?
Absolutely.
You're not chiming in too much, are you?
Just letting you guys roll, man.
Oh, okay. We are kind of. This is how when we first met, we were like them two chipmunks.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Well, another movie. This is back in the '80s, and I'm not fond of '80s movies, but have you ever seen My Bodyguard?
Oh, I just saw a scene from that the other day.
Chris Makepeace.
Matt Dillon.
Yes.
Yeah.
That a wonderful? Isn't that?
I saw that in the theater as a kid.
Oh, it's a wonderful movie.
Yeah, and it made you jump up out of your seat because, well, the ending and the way it goes, and the bullying and all the stuff they try to put into movies now, and that was. Oh, what's weird is that's back then that would have been expensive to film, but by today's standards, that's
everybody carries on about the Breakfast Club, which is not a bad film.
I love the Breakfast Club. You don't like the Breakfast Club?
Oh, I loved it, but I really liked My Bodyguard.
I did too.
It was the most wonderful coming of age film I had ever scene.
Yeah.
This kid being bullied.
Yep.
So he hires his bodyguard.
Then his bodyguard, and then the guy bullying him gets a bigger bully, and then they have the motorcycle. Yeah,
It was wonderful.
It's yeah, and at its core, there's a lot of principles. There's a lot of life lesson stuff.
And finally, the kid has to face the bully, and he kept saying, "Go for the nose, go for the nose."
Yeah.
Love that movie.
I did too.
But it had the most wonderful subplots with the father and his grandmother.
Right.
Oh, who was it? Ruth. I can't think of her name. She
I don't know because
she was a playwright. Ruth Gordon.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful actress. And she was a playwright. She was an actress in the 40s.
Yeah.
Phenomenal screenplay writer.
You know, on the topic of actors, I didn't really have that on the list, but as someone who has done acting and loves to act, I think one thing, like when my wife and I talk about movies a lot, I say, you know, there's she told me a line I'd never heard before that an actor said. And he said, actors play characters, movie stars play themselves. And I thought that was pretty funny.
True.
And I said, because she said that to me because what I told her was, I go, some actors are like character actors and they can do a multitude of different personalities really well. And then there are other actors who don't have to reach too far out of their own sandbox because their personality is already very, very interesting. Like Christopher Walken, Jack Nicholson, Al Pacino, people that they have such a powerful personality that they can just put their personality into the character.
Yeah.
Instead of your character actors like John Lithgow and people that completely transform themselves.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I think the topic came up. We were talking about an actor who is very famous that I don't want to name, but I said, I don't know why he's famous. I said, he's the same character in every role, and that's okay if you have an interesting personality, but his personality is not interesting. And, you know, like, for example, let me think of somebody like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock.
Yeah.
He's a movie star. He is just fun.
Yeah.
He's just fun. I mean, you watch him and you go, man, I'd like to meet that guy.
Yeah.
And you can't, if you want, you can make fun of his acting chops, but he's not that bad.
No.
And then
he makes it work.
And then you get people like Jack Nicholson, who is just profoundly interesting to watch. Christopher Walken is really intense, and you don't care who these guys are playing. You don't go to the theater to see the character they're playing. You go to see Christopher Walken or Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
And then again, like I said, there's the other ones who are just insanely gifted at playing a variety of.
Well, I was thinking about, there are a few what I call movie stars. Someone I really enjoyed watching him progress and sometimes regress and then progress was Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy
Stewart is amazing.
He is. And for a while in the 70s, they were kind of like, nah, Jimmy Stewart. And then he gained a resurgence of respect.
I would think so. People probably have to study his. I'm sorry, interrupt you. His work.
No, they have to study his career.
Yeah, and his work.
Absolutely. And Gary Cooper. I mean, he's up there for a reason. But at the same time, you put next to him Frederick March. Oh, have you seen anything Frederick March has done?
I know that name, but I can't. I'm not.
He did the first A Star Is Born. He's a marvelous actor. But, you know, guys like that. But I was thinking about the character actors you were talking about that came out of the 60s who were so strong, like Eli Wallach. Michael Douglas, I think, is a tremendous actor.
There's no denying. Yeah, he was.
His dad was a movie star who grew into a very strong actor.
Michael Douglas, it's interesting you brought his name up. When my wife and I go, Michael Douglas, one thing about him, if you notice, he's never taken a bad script.
No.
I go, you may not like certain movies, but if you look at the movie and you see the script, he's never taken one that's a dud.
No.
And he also had the very difficult decision in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest of not letting his dad play the lead and giving it to Jack Nicholson.
I know.
And that's but I think the man has proven he's capable of making good decisions at whatever the cost may be. So
I agree. Yeah, there's some very, very good actors out there, and I'm just covering the male actors, you know. But
there's actresses.
But the actresses are just in. Even Meryl Streep, believe it or not, I tend to see consistencies, tendencies that she does from role to role. But she does get buried fairly deep. But I think when she did Out of Africa, that was her swan song. Sophie's Choice. I mean, these were really amazing. But Out of Africa, she was just absolutely amazing. Yeah. I wish I could think of some of
Kate Winslet.
Oh my gosh,
she's got mad skills. Now it's interesting you bring her up because she is one of the very few people, like I've noticed there's so many of everything now. Everything. The industry is flooded with everything, and there is no such thing as the golden age Hollywood iconic class actor that stands out, but she is one, and there's a few. There's only a few. There's not as many as there used to be. No, because I mean, there's people that are there's just too much muddy water, and to see somebody like that. I mean, that was an excellent.
Well,
choice.
Also too, Denzel Washington. And have you seen is it? Counting Figures, Counting Numbers. I can't remember.
Hidden Figures.
Oh my goodness.
That was brilliant. That was a brilliant movie.
Those gals, I wish.
About the 3 women who were part of NASA and helped with the.
I didn't see it, but I know about. Are we talking about the women who did all the calculations? All the hand calculations
yes.
with
and Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner is someone who has grown as an actor.
I know
Absolutely.
about that.
These women,
they played it so well.
They took my breath away. And one of the things I go through now, because there isn't a star system, they don't put names out there. I have a hard time. I'll recognize their faces, but I don't remember their names. They're marvelous. And,
well, there's a lot of
beautiful actors.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Mayor of Easttown yet with Kate Winslet, it will break your heart.
Oh, really?
Her performance in it is just raw, and they let her ad-lib a lot of it. And she said it was one of the hardest parts she has ever played in her life.
What's it called?
Mayor of Easttown.
Okay.
It's on HBO Max.
Did you ever see the movie Jude?
Yes.
I couldn't watch it.
Hard movie.
Some of the previews made me go, no, this is not right, and which is weird because I'm into the arts, I'm into the visuals, I'm into the music, it's very disjointed that I did not watch that movie yet. And
she was really something in that, and so was the man.
Oh, I didn't know she was in that.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
The guy
did you see The Help?
Yes. I did.
Okay, well, I don't need to say anything else.
Brilliant.
We could just go on from there.
So we could just go on and on and on and on and on. The Help is a wonderful movie.
There's a lot of and that's Jackie. Have you seen Mr. Church?
No, but I know what it is.
I'm gonna watch it.
You need to watch it. It's one of my favorite movies. It is. It's a template for good filmmaking in terms of just people telling people stories.
Well, you know what thrilled me too when I saw that trailer. I saw the trailer and I was welling up. It's wonderful to see Eddie Murphy, who has all this talent. First time Mike and I saw him on SNL, we just about lost him.
Oh, yeah.
He's hot tub and
big time.
All those crazy things.
Get down in the hot tub.
Get in the hot tub. What's too hot?
We were quoting him all week long.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
To see him come into a role like this and bring so much depth. Yeah. And you know that he has that kind of depth. You've known it for a long time, but it just was never came out.
Yeah. Like he is. He's a rich talent. All the characters in the nutty professor. You know, like when his the old Tommy Express right on time. And the old lady goes, Cletus, I just want to choke the life out of you right here in front of Jesus. When they're in the church, and then the old man wanted to fight him. He goes, put your shirt on. You look like a roast chicken. There's so many great one-liners from that movie, and he plays all his characters. I grew up watching Eddie Murphy, and I'm like, man, I love Eddie. But anyway, Mr. Church.
That's also why I love James McAvoy, though, in a serious way. He did, in the movie Split, he did 21 different personalities.
He is a scary talent. Do you know him?
No.
You would see him. He was in, Split was later. He was
in Atonement.
Professor X.
He
played Professor X in the
X-Men.
And
I got to watch this.
Very handsome young man.
His thing is, he's one of these actors that, I don't know. You might see a cast and everyone does a good job, And he's one that you go, oh, there's something about that guy. And then you it's easy if you see someone execute a role, and I'm not telling either of you something that you don't already know, but when you watch them in one film, you're like, oh, they crushed it, but maybe that's just their thing. And then you see them in something completely different, and they own that. You're like, oh, this person has
someone who else is like that.
Range.
Forgive me for interrupting.
No.
He sort of lost his way, but Edward Norton.
Oh, Edward Norton. Yeah, well, he lost his way. I think I know what you mean. He got a little weird and hard to work with.
Yeah.
But Edward Norton was a slave to his trade.
Yeah.
He immersed himself in everything he did.
He did.
And he owned it. And I think he went too far.
Yeah,
and then people said he's too hard to work with. Did you see American History X? It's a disturbing movie. But
I fast forwarded a lot of the parts. But I wanted to see it because I wanted to see Edward Norton.
The performance, right.
Yeah, and I was just absolutely blown away.
Yeah, he does that with everything, and
he owns it. That's the only word for it. He really owns it.
He does. He owns everything he does, and to the point where it's like you said, he lost his. You cannot work in this business if you don't collaborate with people to a certain extent. There has to be some willingness to let the other people be people when you're working with them. And I don't know him personally, but it's you kind of self-destruct if you don't allow other people. I know from working with people, like if I'm in charge of something, writing a song, recording a song, directing something in a play or something like that, I know that I succeed if I pull out the best in other people and let them contribute rather than just barking out orders.
Absolutely. You got to do it. It's got to be a collaboration.
Yeah.
It's like a big pirate ship.
Exactly.
And my son likened these things to big pirate ships because he's in the entertainment business. And he said it's just like, we all kind of collaborate and work together. And I once was given a wonderful piece of advice. She said, Diana, when theater loves you, there's nothing like it. It's the best writing.
Yeah.
But she said, when theater doesn't like you, it's a very cold, lonely place. And she said, learn to live a balanced life.
Yeah.
And learn to walk in balanced. And I never forgot that advice. And I think what happened, like you were saying about Edward Norton, I've seen this happen with so many. And frankly, that's what's happening with films today. It's been like, shove the money. This is going to sell, this won't sell, blah, 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 blah. These actors come in, this is great. There's no balance.
There's no balance, and there's not as much depth. And most of the good storytelling comes from external sources, not from. It comes from books and comics. We're over, so we got to find the. No, that's okay. We can walk down a couple hallways before we get to the exit door. The one question I didn't get to ask you. Which we kind of covered some of our interests. What classic film or TV show is your guilty pleasure and why? I'll say mine first to get it out of the way. It's Andy Griffith and The Twilight Zone. Boom. What say you?
On the Waterfront.
On the Waterfront. Okay. Ooh. Yeah, I listed TV shows. I didn't list a movie, but
I love On the Waterfront and any 1940s musical.
Oh, okay. That was the grand era. Of when all the work went into the musicals.
Especially when they're hoofing. I love it.
Because that's another thing we talked about, the work involved too. It actually took an orchestra. It wasn't conducted on keyboards at a Mac.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love On the Waterfront just because Brandel's so amazing in that, and just all the Elia Kazan directed it. That did more for me than anything. And when the priest is down there, who is it? Who plays the priest? I know his name like my own. But anyway, starting the streets of San Francisco. But anyway, wonderful character actor. And he's yelling at these guys. He goes, every time somebody dies down here, it's a crucifixion. And he says, I want you to know Jesus is in the hole with you. This was an amazing movie.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you gotta watch it.
No, I will watch it. I will. I've never seen the Maltese Falcon.
Black and white, but the Maltese Falcon is so great.
I haven't seen it in film school. That I had to watch scenes of stuff, and I've seen a lot of old classic movies. And there's a couple of the big 5-star ones. Those two that I haven't seen.
Watch On the Waterfront. Oh, it'll blow you away.
I will. Jackie, what do you think? What do you got? You got guilty pleasures that are old movies or TV shows that are like?
Oh, The Godfather.
Well, I don't think that's a guilty pleasure. I think that's all. Yeah, but I can't. I think you are in a large camp. Because I mean, when I see The Godfather and I'm channel scrolling, I stop.
Just stop.
I can't help it. Unless it's
Doesn't
Godfather
matter.
3, and I'm like, well, maybe Forrest Gump's on, but
No, but I will tell you, last night while I was painting, I was watching Beckett.
Oh, that's a wonderful movie.
I haven't
With
seen
Rex
Anything
Harrison and Peter O'Toole.
Anything with Peter O'Toole and Richard Burton.
And Richard Burton.
Oh my gosh.
Not Rex Harrison, Richard Burton. I was thinking of.
That's such a great movie.
I haven't seen it.
I love Richard Burton and Rex Harrison and Peter O'Toole.
I'll watch anything
movies.
with Peter O'Toole.
We have to have a podcast.
We have to do
where
this
we
again.
just talk about movies.
Yeah.
Because we talked about a lot today, but because we did one that was all about just Star Wars, but I think we get one, maybe we organize our thoughts a little bit about which movies to talk about and why, and it's a blast. Everybody loves to talk about movies. So we should do another one too, but we gotta wind down. Jackie, or not Jackie, I'm sorry, Jackie. Diana, our guest. So, what's your parting? This isn't a radio show, so take as long as you want. How would you like to close out? And you got some final thoughts? And
I don't think the medium's dead. I think it's changing. I would love for us to be able to get back into the theaters, because that was a wonderful community gathering. I remember when I was 5 years old, going to the theater at Jersey Shore at the Victoria Theater. And I was maybe 6, and my mom and dad, we all dressed up, took my brothers, and they showed White Christmas. And then they raffled a cake. And everybody was so excited. They gave away
like a big
cake.
event.
Oh, everybody. I mean, the balcony was maxed out. The downstairs was maxed out. And I remember on Saturday afternoons buying, the nickel candy bar and watching the Westerns. There's something about bringing community together to watch something on a big screen that is really wonderful. And we've lost a lot of that. It started when we started paring down the theaters. Yeah. Then they had these things with cup holders and heated seats and all that kind of stuff. And now we're sitting in our homes. I don't have a problem with sitting in the home. I think it's a good thing. But I would love to be able to see theaters come back. I see families hanging up sheets, showing movies at night on the summertime, inviting all the neighbors. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I would like to see independent films be shown like that. We don't have to go for the star system. Just
go for. I agree. I
think it's wonderful. I think it's a God-invented idea. The other thought I really had was, we were talking about balance. I'm not fond of censoring. And the codes were almost border on the ridiculous. But at the same time, they had the right idea. Because what it did, it forced these writers to write well. There are so many innuendos in these 1940 and 1930 films that I never got as a kid, but as I'm watching, I'm like, oh my word, this is so cool. The way they're writing this thing, they had to, or otherwise they couldn't show it.
Well, yeah, and they were a lot more strict back then too, because you had some of their rules were you're not allowed to make a cop be a villain, you're not allowed to make a government official be a bad guy. They had, and then the scripts. They didn't use visuals. They didn't rely on visuals as much, so they relied on script. So there were more words, and that's why they talk fast. You're a firecracker. You are, yeah. Well, we'll see about that. Well, I'll show you. Come on, pal. Come on here. Hey, wait on me, buddy. That's why there were so many words.
But that's why those scripts are so strong.
Yeah, I know.
Those scripts are so achingly strong.
I agree.
And it's called balances. Spielberg once said all his budget movies he made when he first started out were his best movies. Then they gave him all the money he wanted, and he made the mistake of making 1942.
1941.
1941.
That was one of my favorite movies.
I know, but he said it was a disaster.
It was notorious for
because he had all this money. Many times, throwing in a restraint. I know for me, whenever I've done anything where I've had a restraint where the parent says, you have to be done with this project in a month because my daughter's going away, or whatever. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It makes me work smarter.
Yeah. I know when you have guidelines, it does. It helps. I agree with you. I agree.
Yeah.
So
that balance.
All right. I don't really have too many final thoughts to add. I think you pretty much covered it. I definitely I agree with your sentiment about people getting together. My favorite thing to do in the world is to walk down a dimly lit red carpet down steps with a bunch of popcorn and see the trailers for a new movie and smell and know that no one can come in and turn the volume down. No one can pause the movie. That I have to immerse myself in the story, and everyone just needs to be quiet. That is the popcorn of American literature. It's the best thing. The smell, the sound. It's an experience that I don't think it'll ever go away. I know some people say, "Oh no, the death of the movie theater is coming because of home theater." No, that's like saying the death of the roller coaster is going to go because of fast cars. It's not going to go away. I think it's going to. And I got to add this real quick. The year before I came here to Pennsylvania, in our tiny little town, there was a theater built in the 1800s, and some of the good folks there restored it. It was live theater. And before we left on that December, they had a big screen, and they showed It's a Wonderful Life, and they gave out free hot chocolate, and the entire town showed up to sit in an 1800s theater and watch It's a Wonderful Life on the screen with hot chocolate. And it was a Norman Rockwell-esque postcard. I said, I'm so glad that I'm going to be taking this memory with me. And we could do a whole show on It's a Wonderful Life.
Well, I could do a whole show on the Marx Brothers. That is a real guilty pleasure. I can't tell you. I first experienced them in a big theater.
Which is the way to experience them. We have to wrap up, or we're going to run out of memory.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll let you go.
All right. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. We're definitely coming back. And thanks, Jackie, for flying the plane.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.
Small Town, Big Life podcast. We'll see you next time.